InfoWars.com.
Do you have any thoughts about him? Are you an A-Rod fan at all growing up or anything like that? What you think about what he might bring to the team?
A fan? What you mean? Like, who is he?
The baseball player, Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, nah, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I know he's gonna be the owner, but I don't know nothing about baseball.
And with that, we move on. Johnny Krasinski.
Okay, the best part about that clip, can we cue that up one more time here? Mackey and Judd, welcome to the show here. It's Write That Down Wednesday, both on Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily, where we make mostly incorrect predictions and hold each other accountable for our predictions. Only show in America. But my favorite part about this clip might have been how quickly Johnny K just gave up. Like Johnny K did, like, no follow up. He's just like, all right, that's weird. Okay.
Do you have any thoughts about him? Are you an A-Rod fan at all growing up or anything like that? What you think about what he might bring to the team?
A fan? What you mean? Like, who is he?
The baseball player, Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, nah, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I know he's gonna be the owner, but I don't know nothing about baseball.
He's like, no.
No.
Okay.
I got absolutely no clue.
But I suppose like when you're in that setting, like Judd used to cover the NFL for 10 or 15 years, and like when you're in that setting, you know, you've got your questions sort of queued up in your mind, and then you kind of, and then based on what their answer is, you probably have a follow up. Like you kind of know where it's going to go.
Well,
and in your mind as a reporter there, Johnny K, like, is there any circumstance in which you expect him to say he has no idea who Alex Rodriguez is?
Well, hell no, of course not. And the thing about it, so this is where Zoom is bad, because if that's in person, like, so if it's a scrum and you're looking Ant in the eye, you're probably like, are you serious? Like, I've done that before. Like, because if you're talking to a person in a person-to-person setting, then I think you say, you don't know who that is. And he might say, no, I really don't. But you press it. But that's where Zoom's a problem. Because, like, Zoom is so impersonal, and there's people who are following you in the Zoom line to ask questions. So it's much tougher to have that, I know you're only 19, dude, but you don't know who A-Rod is, which I do think if Johnny had been in the locker room, that probably plays out differently.
So Ant was born in what, 2002, 2001? He was born somewhere basically around where A-Rod went from Seattle to the Texas Rangers for $250 million. But I think Ant would have been like 10 to 15 years old when A-Rod was getting caught for steroids, and then when he was defiantly going all over national media and waving a finger at people. Yep. So I don't know, man.
2001 he's born. So 2001 okay. he was born. So yeah, and the Yankees won the World Series with A-Rod in 2009, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
So I've been about 8 or so, but as I tweeted, this is not an Ant problem. This, again, to me, shows the baseball problem of if you like baseball at all and you're like 8, this is one of the biggest stars, right?
Think about that.
Like,
he's
it's not
a
like
tainted star. He's a tainted star, but he's nevertheless he's one of the biggest.
But it
stars.
would be different. It would be different if, for instance, Andy Pettitte had bought the Wolves, right? Like, he's a really good pitcher, but if Ant's like, I got no clue, you'd be like, okay, that's fine. But it's
or like if a guy like Mike Trout bought the Twins, right? Like, no one really knows who he is because baseball can't market its players. Boy, yeah. The headline off the show today: if you're Major League Baseball and you heard the Anthony Edwards press conference yesterday, are you alarmed at the danger that envelops your sport right now? Okay, let's go down this hypothetical here when it comes to Alex Rodriguez, because I think we have in the last couple of days we've exhausted the notion that he may move the team. That's definitely going to be a lingering fear. Not that we don't trust Alex Rodriguez at his word. Listen, he's a very trustworthy, likable, upstanding human, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's no reason to doubt what Alex Rodriguez may say publicly or privately or otherwise. But let's move past that for a second. And let's take him at face value when he inevitably comes out and says, after this thing is finalized, hey, we love the Twin Cities. Listen, I've got all kinds of property in the Twin Cities that I've been investing in, and I love popping in for 12 hours on my private jet and glad handing people in the Wolves front office and then flying back to Miami right away. I love spending 5 minutes every quarter in Minneapolis. It's a great town. Let's say he's committed to Minnesota. Do you guys think Alex Rodriguez could actually be a great professional sports owner? Could he be a huge upgrade over Glenn Taylor?
Well, that's two very different questions.
I agree.
The second part of the question is yes, but then again, so could Phil Mackey or Declan Goff.
A potted plant
An
could
upgrade.
probably
Yeah.
do better.
So don't put me in that corner because it'll be a very short segment of saying yes. Of course, he can be compared to Glenn. So bye. As far as can he be a great owner? Is he inquisitive enough? Does he have the attributes that successful people have? I honestly think, in fairness to this discussion, despite the fact that my bias against him says just no, he can't be, right? I mean, he's lied before, he's a bad guy, blah, blah, blah. And I do believe that he's probably lots of those things. Being a bad guy doesn't preclude you from being good at your job, and it doesn't preclude you from being good at owning a team. And this is sort of why I consider that he is going to come in and make noise about a new building, about things like that, because those are smart moves. Like they might turn us off, but those are the moves that if you're going to have successful and Phil, to take your word, change the culture, those are moves that probably need to happen at some point and will. So, not knowing a lot about Mark Lowry, who is his billionaire partner, who I think is a tech genius, who probably is smart too.
He was the CEO of Walmart, wasn't he?
But I think he was e-commerce, right? So I think he built up that part of it. So
he helped people be able to buy things on Walmart.com.
Exactly right. So my guess is he comes from that world. I'm not sure. Point being is these guys
I'll
are
pull
both
him up on Wikipedia. I've been fixated on the A-Rod part this whole time.
Okay. Well, the point is that these guys coming in as a tandem, I think, yes, could be, hopefully will be, very invested, Mark Cuban-esque, best case, Phil, in the project. I don't think that they're going to buy this thing just to like have it in the corner. And they definitely don't sound like people like Glenn who are like, I own an NBA team. This is great. What now? What should I do now? Because I'm a good businessman, but I really don't get the dynamics of sports. A-Rod definitely does. So this might be a surprising answer coming from me, but I really do believe that there is a chance, and I'm certainly willing to give the opportunity, that this group is going to be successful and good and will at least hit the ground with a very good idea of how sports works and knowing what they're doing. So I have hope that this actually could work.
And to your point about just sort of where these guys come from, and I'll give you the quick bio here in a second on Mark Lowry, but you could not find a more polar opposite tandem of owners compared to Glenn Taylor. I mean, listen, Glenn Taylor also has a lot of money and a lot of commas in his bank account, so that's about where the similarities seem to end with these guys. I mean, Glenn Taylor lives in Mankato, wears sweaters from the 80s, and buys local newspaper companies. You know, all due respect to the Star Tribune, but like Glenn Taylor is very local, and he's small town Minnesota. Like, he still lives in Mankato, as far as I know, and then like jets to the games, and then or gets a driver, to take him to the games, and then comes back. These guys, both A-Rod and Mark Lowry, come from the Shark Tank sort of world. And A-Rod literally has been on seasons of Shark Tank, right? These guys are more,
right,
when it comes to business and when it comes to branding and e-commerce for both these guys too. It's a totally different world than the one that Glenn Taylor lives in. So I would love to be a fly on the wall to just 3 billionaires in a room together. A-Rod's not a billionaire. Mark Lowry's a billionaire. A-Rod's got a lot of money. He'll be a billionaire at some point. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for how these three guys interact. I mean, like, bumpkin, small town Glenn, gonna show you the ropes for 2.5 years, and these guys are like, I mean, come on, like these guys.
Can we go through that? Can we go through that? So these two guys, and this is where I don't want to confuse what I'm saying here. I think because they're probably cutthroat and don't care about people, that they could be good. But that is also what I'm about to say is, imagine the scene in the Taylor's kitchen in Naples, Florida, Phil Mackey, where Becky is like making food and Glenn, you know what, too? Here's my guess. Glenn is still smitten, right? Alex Rodriguez is in my house. Great baseball player. So my guess is that these two went in with the game plan. Tell him what he wants to hear. I want to show you guys the ropes for 2 years. Oh, Glenn, of course. Oh, I cannot wait for that.
Mr.
With
Taylor.
every intention.
Oh, Becky, this tuna salad is just delicious. I love
I
it.
think
Are
we're
these
like apple
brownies?
pie.
Is this a family recipe brownies?
Would
What are
you
these brownies?
Would you like some apple pie with a dollop of ice cream, A-Rod? Oh, I would love that. This is such a great. Oh, this reminds me of my home growing up in Florida. My mom was a blah blah blah. These guys
These remind me of the steroid brownies I used to have back in Texas in 2003.
These guys told the Taylors this. You know what this is? If there was a sequel to the film, Look Me in the Eye, the Andrew Wiggins story with Glenn Taylor. If there was a sequel, this one's it.
Before
Tell
we
me
put
you
pen
won't
to
move.
paper, look
Tell
me in
me
the
you-
eye before I give you $200 million.
And by the way, I saw the Star Tribune today has another story about this. Okay. I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying that there's any threat to this franchise in like the next 2 years. Okay. Like they are going to come in. I think this might be fun. Like I shouldn't say that. I think this is going to be fun at first. I think it's going to be great. And these guys could make improvements. And the one thing that I did say before any of this came up, Phil, and I will stand by it, and I might have to eat my words, but the one thing I said about a month back was this: I would risk the Wolves being sold to somebody who moves them to get them better. And this is going down that path.
It's the risk you have to, because, okay, I'm so glad you brought this up. Because it feels like a lot of people think that there's just like a black and white binary decision that has to be made, which is be careful what you wish for. All you people that have bashed Glenn Taylor, listen, he's the reason this team stayed 20 years ago, and he's the reason why this team continues to stay with all these sharks swimming in the waters looking to own NBA franchises, right? He might be an incompetent owner, and this team might never make the playoffs in a league where it's actually mathematically easier to make the playoffs than miss the playoffs. But he's the only one that's been fending off all these sharks that want to move that team to Las Vegas and Seattle. And it's like we have to choose between an ownership group that's going to for sure move the team, or Glenn Taylor, who is this bumbling idiot professional sports owner that can't get out of his own way for 25 years, right? Like that there's no other option. And maybe Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry wind up falling in the bin of guys who are going to move this team to Las Vegas or Seattle. We'll find out in 3 or 4 years. But I refuse to accept the fact that there's not a third option of owners that aren't Glenn Taylor that can make this team better on an annual basis and be more Mark Cuban-like in their obsession with curiosity and winning and player development. And the other thing, too, I think if you're making a list of the things that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry are going to have to come in here and fix or do or change right away. I think for a long time you would have said front office. I think up until, and I'm not saying I'm 100% sold on the Gerson Rosas front office, but those guys seem to be a modern thinking and structurally sound front office in that they're analytically sound. They're hiring smart people from outside the organization.
Yep.
Yes, they've whiffed on a draft pick or two, and again, the jury is very much still out, but I don't like. There's certain times where you'd come in here and be like, "Wait a second, Kevin McHale's running this team, and you guys have like, Tom Thibodeau just runs everything and yells at everybody." Like you'd come in here and say everything needs to be overhauled. I don't think front office is the number one thing. I think the number one thing is the Minnesota Timberwolves franchise. If you think back to high school, and maybe all three of us were this person at some point, you walk into the lunchroom, high school lunchroom cafeteria, right, and the cool kids table is off to the left. And guess who's sitting there? The Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, and both Los Angeles teams. And maybe another team, maybe the Denver Nuggets or something have become cool enough to sit at the cool kids table.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves for 15 years, basically, outside of maybe 1 year where Jimmy Butler like snuck him into the cool kids table for 18 months, right? Mm-hmm. They've been the nerdy braces, glasses kids, just outcasts sitting in the corner, getting trays of food dumped on their head. Like, you have to turn this franchise, and in some ways this city, because the perception of the city is, boy, it's really cold and nobody wants to live in Minnesota and play. It's a great city. You have to change the perception of the franchise and the city to become more of the place to be, the cool place where people want to come, free agents want to come, smart people want to work in this front office, for this scouting staff, as assistant coaches, right? Like, changing that perception is going to be the number one thing. And Glenn Taylor not only was unable to change it, but like his whole mantra as an owner, like he fed into it, right? He was sort of the nerdy small town, like he wasn't going to be a shark walking into a room of Mark Cubans and run the show, right? Alex Rodriguez, as slimy as he is going to walk into that room and people are going to turn their heads. And so it could all blow up in their faces, but I think he has a better chance to make it the cool kids table than Glenn Taylor has had for 15 years.
He's charming too. Like that's the thing, is he's going to come off as charming and people are going to love it. And he's going to, I'm telling you, within the first 6 months of the Wolves playing with this group being in charge, we're going to have people in that building who have not been there for years. And we are going to have chance of A-Rod as he takes his courtside seat.
I wouldn't go that far.
I think we might. I'm telling you.
I don't think he's going to be welcomed with open arms. I don't think so. You think he's going to be welcomed with open arms by the fans?
I think it's going to be, but not by people our age, my age, or your age. But I think people Dex's age are going to think that this is cool, because you're right.
Nobody younger than Declan knows who he is. Apparently,
yeah. But that doesn't. But the key is he's going to be slick and he's going to be charming, and that's the key to sell. I mean, if you know him as a baseball player, that's almost worse. That's almost worse because of the steroids. But if you have seen him on Shark Tank, or he comes in, I'm telling you, he's going to charm us. We get got in this town worse than anybody because we're starstruck. We are starstruck by people. I've seen this act. This movie is played out in this town before. And if he can get a semblance of success from this team, you're going to get the A-Rod. This is going to be so cool. And the Wolves are going to make themselves, if they're smart, the in thing. Because here's the thing about this. The way that Glenn Taylor has run this godforsaken team for years runs a 180 against what the league is. This league is hip. This league is cool. This is
curious.
This is not a. Yeah. Think about it. The Wolves do everything that isn't their league. Like, the Wolves are run flat out. The Wolves are run like a bad MLB team. Old school, old thinking. They're not cool. They're not hip. Ant is. Carl might be, but if you think about the structure of the franchise, when's the last time that you heard a kid say, I want to go see a Wolves game? Well, now, but you can change that, and it could become the thing.
I think now, and Glenn Taylor has been pretty awful at hiring smart, curious, shark-like people in that organization. I think whether it was intentional or he stumbled into it, I do think he's onto something with Ethan down to Gerson, even down to Chris Finch now. I feel like Chris Finch has sort of unlocked the best of D'Lo in these last few games, and like there's some good things happening there. But it's always hard when your owner is behind the times, right? Like it can never fully blossom as an organization. Correct. from a basketball perspective, from a branding, marketing perspective, resources, everything, if your owner also isn't the most curious, shark-like guy in the room. And it's always just kind of felt like any success they've had under Glenn Taylor is despite Glenn Taylor, right? It's because they sort of lucked into KG. It's because they maybe lucked into Karl Anthony Towns with the number 1 overall pick, right? And Flip Saunders has been great, prior to his passing for the organization. But I just think almost every piece of success they've had, and there haven't been many pieces of success, are in spite of Glenn Taylor for the most part.
And because of the fact that it runs so high in the franchise, this all goes back, Phil, to your word. It's culture. The culture has to be changed. I mean completely, because the perception does. The perception of this team, it really is incredible that you can have a guy like Ant on your team, and yet your team feels like a 78-year-old grandpa driving an Oldsmobile, which is how the franchise feels. That's how the franchise feels. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that, a guy like A-Rod and his group are going to come in, and I think they're going to change the culture dramatically. And there is no reason why the Wolves in the league that they're in can't be the hip product, the product that kids say, yeah. Because you know what? They ain't going to Twins games. Those take 4 hours and they're played in 37 degrees, okay?
Today it'll be 3.5. There are 7 innings, so.
Can't wait.
The Wild has their fan base, and that's great. But, it's more of a cult, and that's my sport, but I get that. The Vikings are king. But the Wolves are the one team in this town where I don't see a reason why, if you're a kid and you're into sports, you're not saying, oh, my God, that's awesome. Yeah, the Wolf Ant. Give me a jersey.
I will tell you one thing just to – actually, I don't know if this would quiet fears of the Wolves moving or if this would pour gasoline on a fire here. But having been in the state of Washington for the last month and living in Seattle, people hate A-Rod here. Hate A-Rod here. Like Lou Piniella, I think they put Lou Piniella in the Mariners Hall of Fame sometime recently, and he went through and was talking about the different players, Ken Griffey Jr., and just like thanking the big name guys that, Ichiro, et cetera, and Randy Johnson, and he got to A-Rod, and like he said, and I know that he's, got himself into some trouble, but Alex Rodriguez at the beginning of his career, and people like showered Lou Piniella with booze.
Oh, wow.
And so I think one of two things. It's either you can rule Seattle out entirely for anything to do with A-Rod, or pouring gas on the fires of fear. Could he look at this in 3 or 4 or 5 years if he doesn't get a new arena in the Twin Cities and say, boy, he loves to be loved, right? Like he's a pretty insecure dude who's become successful.
You're weird.
Could this be his way of like getting back in the good graces of his first ever professional sports town by bringing the Sonics back to Seattle, right? Like that is the one thing that would keep me up at night a little bit watching this thing play out as a Timberwolves guy.
It'd be great for you now.
But it wouldn't. Like
you'd have a basketball team.
But I want them. But I'm Minnesota. Like I want.
Yeah, but Sonics jerseys, Sonics gear is so cool.
I want the Sonics to come back as an expansion
Give me a hoodie.
team, not as.
Give me a hoodie. Make sure they're the Sonics though. If these jokers come up with any new name, that's out. Sonics was a great logo. Bring it back.
I agree with that. By the way, our Timberwolves discussion today powered by our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. So. If you're a business owner, I don't know, maybe if you're part of A-Rod Corp and you got all these businesses, including the Timberwolves now, and you're just looking for a little peace of mind, a little risk protection, some resources that can give you just a comfy pillow to rest your head on at night without having to overthink the risks involved. That's where Federated comes in. They've got the best online client destination for risk management resources. It's called MyShield. And you can check out what MyShield's all about and all the industries Federated protects at federatedinsurance.com. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. All right, just real quick before we get into write that down predictions and talking Twins for the day. If you guys had to make a decision right now, you get one of two roads. Road number one is A-Rod and Mark Lowry wind up strong-arming the city into a new arena. It doesn't work. And in like 4 years, the Wolves are gone. Or A-Rod and Mark Lowry come in, much more like Mark Cuban, and they're just like they're hyper competitive, they're smart, they're forward thinking, they're curious, and they want to win and they want to build something great here. And the Wolves become a perennial relevant. I'm not going to say championship, but a perennial relevant team in the Western Conference. Which one would you choose? What's more likely?
Declan, go ahead.
I mean, I'll take the latter because this franchise has lacked it forever. I will say that I'm up for interpretation. I have not given a bleep about the Wolves since Kevin Garnett left in 2007. I tried to go all in when Jimmy Butler came, and even then, it wasn't fun watching the Wolves. Like I think, and a lot of people had that assessment too, even before the Butler's knee injury. That season, like it was good. Like the Wolves were winning games, of course, and they were finally relevant, but it wasn't fun. And I'm ready for this team to go to the next step, and that's great. I'm up for interpretation. Yes, I would be sad if they left, but of all the teams, if they were to leave, they would affect me the least. It would affect me the complete least.
A lot of people say that.
It would destroy me. Even if they came to Seattle, it would destroy me. It would be terrible.
They'd be in your backyard.
That's
I wouldn't be able to root for them if they moved. This is great. They'll just move to Seattle. Like if they moved to Seattle, I would not be able to root for them in the way that I do when they're rooted in Minnesota. It might sound weird, but Minnesota is my sports tie. So I'm wishfully thinking that it's going to be the second choice, which is they're going to come in here and they're going to and maybe they have to get a new arena for it to guarantee that they keep the franchise here. But I'm willing to roll the dice, like Judd said. If you want to upgrade ownership, there's a risk. This franchise is one of the lowest valued franchises in the league because of Glenn Taylor. And so anyone who's going to buy it, there's a risk that they're going to move the team. And would I rather have had somebody other than Alex Rodriguez buy the team? Like on the surface, yeah, I don't know. He just doesn't.
Well,
no, but I'm here for it.
This, to me, all comes back to the fact that I don't trust Glenn. And like, I don't trust a guy who's been trying to, I think, on and off sell this team since something like 2014. And now within a week, he meets two guys and he agrees to sell the team. And it literally is like a 7-day period. What the hell? All of that being said, if the option is, if you came to me today and said, okay, we'll grant your wish if you want, we will kill this deal now, pull it off the table, Glenn keeps the team. I'm sorry. I want the sale. I want the sale because without the sale, nothing is going to change. That's clear. I mean, the one common denominator, right, of this entire boondoggle, years and years of just utter ineptitude, what's the one thing? It's Glenn. It's no one coach. It's no one GM. It's no one player. It's Glenn. And look, I don't care what you think of KG. To me, one of the most instructive things about Glenn and where this team has gone, and this franchise, when he bought it, was not always like this, but it has been now for 15 years, far too long, Phil. The one, like if you had to say, pick one thing that encapsulates Glenn. David Kahn comes to mind. I mean, he went to David Stern and said, who you got for me? There's a lot of things that come to mind, but I would pick KG. You have not once but twice now, at least twice, alienated not the best player in franchise history, easily the best player in franchise history.
The only player in franchise history.
Exactly. But I mean, you have twice alienated him. I mean, one of the things that I really feel bad about for Flip and his family as far as what he tried to do here, he worked his ass off to bring KG back from the Nets and to repair a relationship that was broke. I mean, he worked, I'm sure, night and day, right? Mm-hmm. And that press conference was a crowning achievement. He had KG back, and I know he was fried, but that's not the point. The point is he had gotten us that piece back. I mean, that was going to be jersey retirement. That was going to be, and I'm sure that he did more work than we will ever know about. And Glenn screwed it up again. That's what I would say encapsulates Glenn Taylor to me.
And we'll know really quickly, if this sale goes through, we'll know really quickly. The first thing on A-Rod's checklist should be to get Kevin Garnett back in the organization in some form. If it's a sliver of minority ownership and KG owns 3% of the team, like if KG becomes sort of what Magic Johnson was for the Dodgers, where he's the highest profile owner, but he's just basically there because he's Magic Johnson. And he's Los Angeles, right? And it's for marketing and it's for branding. That needs to happen with Kevin Garnett. And even if Kevin is also 50% responsible for the fallout with this organization, and Kevin Garnett is a volatile personality, there's a lot of stories behind the scenes about him being very difficult to work with and him being very disrespectful to a lot of people behind the scenes. And so there is that side to Kevin Garnett's personality. The fans love him. The organization is Kevin Garnett, and Alex Rodriguez, I think, has a much, much better chance to make that happen than a lot of other potential owners, and for sure, Glenn Taylor.
And if you own a team, sometimes you have to swallow your damn pride. Case in point, Randy Moss is a cantankerous, recalcitrant human being, and the Vikings jettisoned him and let him go. And that was as ugly, probably, as it can possibly get. And what did the Wilfs do? The Wilfs went back and said, how do we repair this? Not, we got a falling out.
Yeah, it's not about you. It's not about you, exactly. The owner. It's about the fans, and it's about the team.
And you are the steward of the franchise. So you're right. It's not about, and KG can be a pain in the ass, I'm sure. But it was incumbent on Glenn to go to KG and say, what do you need here?
Yep.
Like, what do I need to do for you? And I mean, Flip's dying. He should have been on the phone with KG then and saying, what can we do here? Like, you're near the end of playing, and I know that, and that's fine. But what can we do here? Not fracture it again.
Mm-hmm. So listen, I'm here for A-Rod, man. I'll do the A-Rod chant with you guys.
Zero chance.
I'm going to show up.
A-Rod. Just wait, Declan, until tonight's Game 1 lineups for the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals, it'll be reminiscent of that great Knicks-Kings series in 2001 in the Finals. Lawrence Funderburk will come back for that one.
How to lose a guy in 10 days. All right, so write that down, predictions coming up here on Mackey and Judd. And don't forget, we are rocking daily Vikings conversations on Purple Daily. Yesterday, we did a deep dive into the state of Kirk Cousins that I think set a lot of people off, at least in my Twitter mentions yesterday. So we might have to follow up on that today. But predictions sure to go wrong coming up next on Mackey and Judd.
Write that down.